Hello everyone, here I'll be talking about different research and presentation skills to help you all prepare as you start doing different research projects and presentations this block. Alright, so we're going to start with some research skills. I'll just touch upon how to go about familiarizing yourselves with your research topic as you begin your projects, and then talk about the differences between a review article and a research article, and also show you all how to access the library databases to find more specific scholarly information related to your topics. Okay, so as you kind of start out at the beginning of the research process, you really just want to familiarize yourself with a topic. So you're not looking for sources that you are going to be citing in your research or in your presentation. You just want to make sure that you have a good sense of what your topic is before you start doing the research. So a great way to do this is by using your textbook to kind of introduce yourself to your topic. You can also look at the textbook references to see if you can find some other sources with more pertinent information. Again, that is if your topic is in the textbook. You can also use Wikipedia to find some basic information. Make sure you also look at their references. Don't just believe everything that Wikipedia says. You can Google Scholar your topic, but Google Scholar will have really a lot of endless possibilities, and I will talk more about the differences between Google Scholar and a curated data set like Web of Science. So here's just an example of a Wikipedia page if your topic is adaptive radiation. As you can see, there are references in Wikipedia, these numbers, so you can just click those and see what Wikipedia cites. Okay, so once you're familiar with your topic, you can use Web of Science or other scholarly search engines or references from your text to find primary research articles. So for your student mini presentations, you want to find at least 2 primary research articles that sound interesting to you. You can read their abstracts and then you select one of these that is your favorite to use in your presentation. For your field research projects, you will definitely need to find way more than 2 articles to cite in your research. If you cannot access any specific article or other resource that you need to use for your project, you can find a librarian. Our Tut Science liaison is Leslie Mackey, so her contact information is here and she's a great resource to help out if you cannot find anything. Alrighty, so now I'm going to talk about the difference between a research article and a review article. Some of you guys might already be familiar with this, but we'll just go over it. So a research article is a primary source. It reports the methods and the results of the study performed by the authors, and it is an original study, has not been performed before. Research articles usually follow a set layout with the scientific method. So they've got an abstract, an introduction, method section, results, discussion, a conclusion, and literature cited. So here's just an example of a research article related to our example topic of adaptive radiation. This is a paper that looks at the phylogeny and timescale in the Hawaiian honey creepers of their adaptive radiation. So on the other hand, a review article is a secondary source. So it's written about other articles. The authors that write the secondary review articles are not reporting about their own research. They provide an overview of the existing literature on the topic. So actually one thing you can do when you're looking for primary research articles, if you find a good review article when you're familiarizing yourself with your topic, you can actually look at their literature cited and find some research articles in there that might be useful for you to use in your presentation. And then lastly, there's usually not a set layout for these review articles. So here's just an example on adaptive radiation, and he's just explaining the radiation and explosive diversification and why these distinctions are important to understanding evolution. He's not actually talking about a study that he performed himself. Okay, so now to talk about the differences between using Google Scholar and Web of Science or another scholarly database from the library. So Google Scholar is a whole internet search engine. So it is kind of filtering these scholarly results based on the publishers submitting information. On the other hand, Web of Science is a human curated database. So it's people, scientists that are filtering these academic scholarly journals. Google Scholar, you can find sources that include books, reports, theses, preprints, and other sources, so not just scholarly journal articles. Whereas Web of Science is very journal focused. The articles are selected via scholarly and other quality criteria. That's how they're curated on the site. Google Scholar, when you type in your keywords into the search bar, it searches the full text article, so everything in the text. Whereas Web of Science only searches the citation, the abstract, and the tagging information. And those are kind of the main differences with your projects here when you want to find a scholarly research article. We really want you to use Web of Science. It's just a better resource to use in the field of science when you're looking for scholarly information. There are some other databases that may be helpful depending on your topic. So here are just a list of some databases that might be useful to you. These are all linked in the PowerPoint on Canvas, so you can find them all there, or you can also find them on the TUT Library website. All right, so now I'm going to talk a little more specifically about your animal behavior or morphology presentations and show you guys how to use Web of Science. So as you can see here, I have selected a couple of science communications or kind of popular science articles. This is one I found in National Geographic about the Gunther's marsupial frogs that mysteriously re-evolved a full set of teeth, which is a really interesting article. So I am going to find a primary research article related to it. And I've also selected one on an interesting behavior. So here's a New York Times science article on the Steller sea eagle, and it talks about vagrancy, which is when birds migrate somewhere that's very far away from home and they end up in a very different place, like this mysterious eagle. So I want to find some primary research articles that are related to these science articles. So I'm going to navigate over to Web of Science. So to get there, I'm going to navigate to the CC Library homepage. So coloradocollege.edu/library. And that is going to take me to this main web page right here. So as you can see under the one search bar, which by the way, you can also use to search for some popular science literature as well. But under this one search bar, we see this link to databases A to Z. So I'm going to click the link. And here's where you access all of the library's databases. So the one that we're going to focus on is Web of Science, like I mentioned before. So I'll click the W, and then I just click Web of Science, and it takes me to this database. So I'm going to start with a search related to the first popular science article I have here. And just to clarify, for your projects, you will just be doing one. I am just showing you guys two different articles as examples. So this is the one that looks at the Gunther's marsupial frogs. So I want to use something pretty specific to find a primary research article that's very related to this article. So for my keywords, I'm going to use the scientific name here, Gastrotheca guntheri. So I'm going to type that in here. And then the topic of this article is how these frogs mysteriously re-evolved a full set of teeth. So I'm just going to say teeth and see what that shows up. So here's an article that actually looks very related to that science article that we just saw. As you can see here, you can see the whole abstract. So I recommend reading some abstracts and seeing what interests you. This seems like it's a research article that fits what we want. So I want to look at the full article. So here I'm going to click this TUT link button in the top left corner, and here we go. So here I can read the full article. I can see the abstract, I can see all of these sections of the article, and I think it's very related to what I want to present on. For your presentations, you want to pick one figure from one of the articles that you find to share with the class. So I would just pick one of these that I think is the most important and shows a key point from the article that I would present on in my mini presentation. So this is a great article to use for my first science article. And then my second one that's more related to a unique behavior. For this, maybe I want to present on the topic of vagrancy in general in birds, or maybe I want to focus more on the stellar sea eagle migration. It kind of really just depends what you're interested in. So I will do a search here. Let's do a new search. So I'm just going to say, I'll use a common name for today's sake, stellar sea eagle migration. And you can see here, we've got a bunch of articles related to migration. So let's see what is interesting to me. I like this one about the seasonal change in habitat use. So I'm going to click on it. I can read the abstract here. I'll see the keywords, and then I can look at the full text. Once again, if you have any issues finding any of your resources, definitely reach out to Leslie Mackey. She is a great resource to use and can definitely help you. So again, here is the article. I've got to download the PDF here. I will not do that right now, but once again, I will just find a figure that's interesting and can kind of summarize the article in my presentation. Another way to go about presenting this topic, like I mentioned before, it all depends on what you're interested in. If I'm interested in the concept of vagrancy in birds, I'm just going to type in, say, avian vagrancy and see what that comes up with. So here it's much more broad. It talks about vagrancy in a wide variety of birds, and I could present on this topic as well. So here's just another example. Download the full article, find a figure, all that. Something else you can do in Web of Science is you can filter by all these different categories. So there's like publication year. If you want to find a more recent article, that's kind of what we recommend doing. You can often choose, depending on how many hits you get, you can filter between research articles and review articles, and you can search by author, etc. There are lots of different search options here to help you guys. Okay, so the last step of putting your research projects all together, if you need to talk to Maybelline, you can talk to me, Olivia, or you can talk to your class tutors to have your articles approved. If there's any doubt, especially if you have chosen a research article versus a review article, we really highly recommend talking to us. So once you have your articles approved, you can get started on your research and presentation project. We recommend doing it sooner rather than later. Don't procrastinate this. And then once you have your presentation all together, you just start practicing, and I will go over some of the tips that we have for presenting to the class. Okay, so now I will talk about some helpful presentation skills for when you start doing your presentations, both for your mini science communications article, as well as for your group research project when you start doing that for the class. So something that's really important to have, obviously, is slide visuals. You already need to do this on your mini presentations, but you also do this for your final field research project presentations as well. So here is just a visual of Chuck. He is our friendly department ball python. You can come and say hi to him sometime if you'd like. But in terms of making your slides really appealing and really very readable for the audience, you want to make sure that you have readable text. So think about font size, font style, and color, and make sure that there is strong contrast if you overlay your text onto photos. Next, make sure that you have bullets. We don't want paragraphs. No one wants to read sentences upon sentences. No one will do that. So really just focus on the visuals, the images, the figures, and some short text that you will explain. In general, it's good to have about 4 to 6 points per slide, and you want to aim for about 1 minute of talking per slide. And then, like I mentioned before, having various visuals, so photos, videos, graphs, tables, other figures, etc. those always make it easier for the audience to follow along with your presentation. Okay, so I'll briefly touch upon the format that you guys should follow for your final field project presentations. So these are your longer presentations that you'll give at the end of the block. So you want to start out with a title that summarizes what you will be talking about in your presentation, kind of the focus of your research project. Then you'll give kind of an introduction, give some background info that will help the audience understand your research better and why you were going about doing your research. Here, it's also important to state your hypotheses, state your research questions and goals, summarizing why you did your project. Then you'll go into your methods. It's great to take some photos when you're out in the field so you can include this in your methodology. Then you will talk about your results. You definitely want to include some sort of table or figure, multiple of these is great as well. Include some photos and just share the raw data and the raw results that you got from your study. And then the discussion section is where you will go into explaining your results, kind of talking about the implications and what they mean. Then lastly, you will kind of summarize your presentation, draw some conclusions. You can talk about the bigger picture here, talk about future studies, where this research could go, and just talk about the take-home message ultimately. So kind of in your discussion and summary and conclusion, that's a great place to bring in some more background literature, as well as in your introduction. And lastly, you'll just want to cite this literature that you use. A few other things that are super helpful to include in a presentation, just think about the logical flow. So like I mentioned, make sure that your audience is well-versed in your topic. That's why the introduction is really important before you dive right into your specific study. You'd also want to link to the class material if possible at all, talk about things you're learning and how your project relates. And it can also be helpful to include overview slides where you show the audience what you'll be talking about. So you introduce what you'll discuss, you'll do your discussion, give your presentation, and then at the end, kind of recap what you discussed. All right, lastly, here are just some oral presentation techniques. So make sure that you're speaking loudly, slowly, and clearly. Masks make this extremely difficult, as I'm sure you're all aware. So it's good always to check in with people kind of in the back of the classroom to make sure that everyone can hear you very well. And make sure that you're speaking slow enough that you allow the class time to keep up with their notes. Try to avoid using ums or other fillers excessively. I know it can be kind of hard to do. Don't directly read off your notes or the slides. Make sure to keep eye contact with your audience so you can really be engaging. You also want to make sure that you have good posture when you're presenting. That will help you appear that you're confident and you know exactly what you're talking about. And lastly, and most importantly, make sure that you rehearse your presentation beforehand so that everything goes smoothly on the day of and you feel confident. Here are just some visuals using baby owls. As you can see, this top owl here is very alert, very awake and has great posture, making good eye contact with the audience. Whereas this bottom owl here is very sleepy, very grumpy, and does not look very excited about presenting. So just some visuals to help you guys imagine and prepare for how to present yourself during your presentations. Finally, if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me or your professor and we can help you out with any of this. And here are some memes as well.